I'm going to try to make it as simplistic as possible. And the reason that is hard is because every single trip and every single family is unique. And that is my favorite part of talking to other people who have traveled and seeing how they do it and knowing that worked for them, but maybe that wouldn't work for me, or the way that we are traveling might not work for you. And that's okay.
Hey there, and welcome to the Digital Nomad Family Podcast. This is the place where families who have or want to have a nomadic lifestyle come together to talk about the highs and lows that this life brings. We celebrate the joys and support each other in the hard. So, if you are a digital nomad family or will be in the future, this is the place for you. We're glad you're here.
Hey guys, it's Marissa, and welcome back to another episode of Digital Nomad Family Podcast. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who has been listening to the podcast so far and letting me know about episodes that they've liked and parts that they've enjoyed. I really appreciate that. And it's so fun to be doing something like this. And for me, I'm just sitting here with a microphone, but when I get a message from someone that says, hey, I listened to the podcast and I really liked this aspect, or thank you for sharing that resource, it's such a cool thing because I'm like, oh my gosh, it actually is helpful. So if there is something that you guys find helpful, I really do love to hear about it because it really can just feel like this weird thing with me just sitting wherever I happen to be sitting with a microphone talking about a subject for that day. So thank you for everyone who has sent me a message. And if you have a question, if there's something that you want me to talk about, if there's something that you think is an important part of being a nomadic or traveling family, I would love to hear about it. And the best way to reach me is on Instagram. Our family has an account and it's called Family of Dashes, DASHES. And over there on Instagram, we do all kinds of stuff. We do posts about normal stuff. We do a lot of stuff in stories and just share our life. And if you want to know more about who we are and what we do and what we're up to, we would love for you to follow us over there. Today's episode is all about planning a trip. And I'm going to try to make it as simplistic as possible. And the reason that is hard is because every single trip and every single family is unique. And that is my favorite part of talking to other people who have traveled and seeing how they do it and knowing that worked for them, but maybe that wouldn't work for me, or the way that we are traveling might not work for you. And that's okay. And so I've created a resource and I really hope that it will be helpful to you guys. And we're going to work through this resource. If it is something that you would want, go over to Instagram and let me know, hey, I really want the questions to ask when planning a trip PDF, and I'll send it to you. But we're just going to work through it today. And it's going to hopefully work for you if you're doing a long trip, like you're a nomadic family, or if you are doing a family vacation, if you're just getting into being a nomadic family. This is a way to kind of take a huge task, like planning a trip, and put it down into a little more bite-sized pieces. So that is what today is going to be all about. Before we get into it though, I want to say a huge shout out to our sponsor for today's episode, Divi Agency Coach. And Divi Agency Coach is a coaching business owned by my husband, Eric. And they help people who have online marketing or web design agencies take their business to the next level. So if that is something that you might be interested in, I would highly suggest checking them out. Eric does a great job at looking at where you are with your business and what your goals are and helping you get there. So thank you, Divi Agency Coach, for today's sponsor. So like I said, I've created a PDF for this, and we're really just going to walk down it. And I hope that you guys can connect with this and that you will find some value in it. And the first thing I think is when you are planning a trip, you have to ask some questions. And I think there are three main types of three questions that you have to ask yourself. And the first one is, how long are we able to be gone? Now, if you are a nomadic family, then this answer is until we decide to not be nomadic anymore. But try to think, how long do we want to be on this part of this trip? Or how long do we want to be in this country? Or just tweak it to however you need to ask it. But the first thing is you're looking at length of time. And this is going to be affected by a lot of stuff. And some examples that will affect it are, what does our work schedule allow? If you are not full-time nomadic yet, then you are going to have to think about your work schedule, how long you can be gone. Are you able to work nomadically for a while? Will they work with you on that? And your work schedule is going to be a big part of this. The second kind of sub part of that is, what does our kids' school and extracurricular activities look like? If your kids are in a lot of stuff, then you're going to have to think about their schedules when you're planning your trip also. And then the last one is, how long can we afford to be away? If you are going on a vacation, then this question is very important because we do tend to spend more money on vacation than we do in our day-to-day lives. If you are a nomadic family, you really connect with that in the sense of, we're not on vacation all the time. We are living our lives the same, not the same way. I can't say we're living them the same way, but at the same financial level that we would be living it in the States. We're not spending an exorbitant amount of money on all the tourist things around us or going out to eat every single night. Like, we'll cook some meals at home. And so the question is, what can we afford? If you are nomadic, there are some countries that are more expensive than others. And you are going to have to ask, how long can we afford to stay in this country? For me and my family, we do tend to try to go to places where the US dollar is going to be stronger and it'll reach farther. That's why we're planning to spend so long in Central and South America, because in so many, not all, but in so many countries, our dollar does go farther. And so if we are out and about, we can afford to grab lunch or dinner or the kids a snack or something. And we really enjoy that. We like being able to eat out when we want to, or grab some snacks for the kids, or just whatever, and not feel like we're so tied to the same like amount of times we would go out to eat in America. We have to equal that here. We can kind of do that stuff more. And so that all of those things are going to go into answering, how long are we able to be gone? And that's the first thing you need to figure out. How long can we be gone? / how long can we be in this country? So if you are nomadic, if you need to be in a place where the US dollar goes farther, then if you are American, of course, then places like the UK, some places of Australia, New Zealand, some places in Europe are not going to necessarily be the best bang for your buck as far as being able to go out to eat a lot, or be able to kind of do whatever you want to do, if you will, with your money. And so we, like me and my family, we try to stay in those places for a shorter amount of time. Right now. Now, if you are at a financial level where you can afford to stay in Paris for 3 months, that is awesome. Send me a message on Instagram, because I want to be your best friend. No, I'm just kidding. Not really. I don't know. That takes us to number 2. When do we want to go? When do we want to go on this trip? When are we planning to make this trip happen? When are we planning to leave the country we're in? When are we going? And this is my favorite, not favorite, but one of my favorite things to think about, because some of the things that go into answering this question is there a tourist season for where we're going, and do we want to avoid it? Because personally, even though we travel a lot, I don't classify myself as a tourist. We're not doing the typical tourist stuff for the most part. We do certain tourist things, but we're not just here on vacation. And because of that, if you're able to say, okay, we can go to a country for 3 months, but you know that December, January, February is going to be a madhouse in a place in South America because it's beautiful summertime and you know there's just going to be lots of people there. The kids are off school. And you're like, oh man, do we want to go there? Do you want to spend your 3 months there during the tourist season? If your answer is yes, because I want that great weather too, totally fine. I do not blame you at all for wanting good weather. I feel like I chase good weather, but it always eludes me. And so it's like we play this game of tag, but I feel like I'm always it, and I'm just chasing the good weather. But if you're like, no, I don't want to be, I'm okay to be in a place where maybe it is a little colder, we need to wear coats and pants, and I would rather be in a place in Brazil or Peru or Ecuador when maybe it is a little chillier, but there's not as much people. And so think about that. The second part of this question is there an off season or a shoulder season that would be cheaper? When you get into traveling, you're going to hear people talk about shoulder seasons. And if you don't know what that is, it's the sides. Imagine the busy part is right in the middle. And then on either side of that is going to be your shoulder seasons. So we lived in Norfolk, Virginia, which is right on Virginia Beach. So everything is more expensive in June, July, and August because it's the beach and everyone wants to go on vacation. So if you wanted to visit Virginia Beach, it would be a better financial idea, not necessarily weather, but a better financial idea to maybe go in September if you could, because you are going to be able to find maybe a house for a little bit cheaper or negotiate with an Airbnb, something like that, because kids are back in school then and most of the tourists are gone. And so places are just hoping to find more people to come. So if you're able to go on a shoulder season, and it's the before and the after of the main tourist season, then that can be a good thing for your money. But again, if you want to be there during the prime time, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that this is a really great lead into the next part of the question, and that is there a celebration we want to connect the trip to? And by celebration, I can mean anything. A prime example of this is Oktoberfest in Germany. Well, if you want to go to Oktoberfest in Germany, you are not going to go in August. You're not going to say, well, we really wanted to hit up Oktoberfest, but it's expensive then, so we're going to go before. No, you're going to go during Oktoberfest. You're going to be okay spending a little more for an Airbnb or a hotel or wherever you stay. You're going to understand that there's going to be crowds, it's going to be waits, it might take longer to get an Uber. But you're okay with that because you are experiencing the thing you want to experience. Another celebration that we connect to a lot is birthdays, because as a nomadic family, gifts can be a really hard thing. Like physical birthday gifts can be a very tricky thing because our kids live out of carry-on size backpacks. And so we really try to connect things to their birthdays. For example, when we're in Peru for these few months, we are taking the kids to the Amazon rainforest for Riley and Ryan's birthdays because their birthdays are very close to each other. And so instead of getting them a lot of gifts, they're getting this great experience. And so that's kind of a trip within a trip. But again, you can still use this layout of what we're working for, even for a trip within a nomadic lifestyle. And that's exactly what I've done for the trip to the Amazon and our trip to Machu Picchu, actually. Is there something else that you really want to see? If you want to see the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City, that's a one-day event. You have to be there for that day. If you want to go to Dublin and celebrate St. Patrick's Day, you have to be there for that. And so just think, is there a specific time that we need to be there? And that's really going to affect this question of when do we want to go? And then the last big question that you need to ask is, what is the purpose of this trip? Or what are we hoping to get out of this experience? And I think a lot of people don't go this far in their trip planning. And I think that is where, I hate to say regret, because I don't like to think that people regret going on any kind of trip or having any kind of experience like that they've planned like that. But I have talked to people, and I have some situations in my life on trips that we've gone to where I do have some regrets. And I'm like, oh man, now some of these things I didn't know about while that was happening. For example, I had no idea about luggage drop when we started traveling and when we were adopting Martin and Stoyanka. And so I kid you not, me, Eric, Riley, and Ryan spent an entire day at the airport at Barcelona when we could have dropped our luggage and explored the city. And by all day, I mean, we spent about, I want to say 13 hours in the Barcelona airport when we could have gone out, explored the city more. But I didn't know about luggage drop back then. I was like, we have these bags. We weren't worried about the amount of luggage we had for that trip. And so we had probably 5 suitcases between the 4 of us. And so that was just a different trip. And had I known about luggage drop, I'd have said, oh my gosh, let's jump in a taxi, find a luggage drop location, and then explore the city. Or see if the airport themselves had luggage storage, which a lot of airports do. And so that's kind of a regret I have. And that's why this question is here, is to really help you think beforehand about the purpose or what you want to get out of this trip. And so some of the things you can think about is this for relaxation, education, or a cultural exchange? And so there's nothing wrong with saying this trip is purely for relaxation. When we went to, where were we? Prague. When we were in Prague, there were some days where I was like, I'm looking kind of at these 2 weeks as kind of a calm 2 weeks, because we only had 2 weeks there. Prague is not a big city, and so we did do some tourist stuff while we were there, but I really tried to use it as just a time to collect myself after Istanbul and before getting ready to go kind of on really fast travel through Poland. And that was kind of the purpose of being in Prague. And so because of that, I don't look back at my time in Prague and say, oh man, I spent so much time in the apartment. I should have gone out more. I should have found more things to do. We should have done more day trips from the city. I have zero regret about Prague, because I went into it knowing I want us to just kind of calm down and get ready for the insanity that's about to come. And then education. That there's so many amazing educational experiences in this world. And if your focus is education, then definitely knowing that going into it is very beneficial, because you can help your family learn about it before you go. And an example for my life, my family, is Machu Picchu. We are currently gearing up to go to Machu Picchu. And so the kids are learning about Machu Picchu, about the Inca culture, and that way they can appreciate it more. Another example that we did was Auschwitz, preparing them for that, just not just from an educational standpoint, but also an emotional standpoint, getting ready for that experience, and just being as ready as you can. You're never going to be ready for Auschwitz. It's not a thing that you are prepared for, no matter how many documentaries or books or interviews you read or watch or listen to. It hits you, and it should. But you can help your family get ready for it. Another part that you can think about is, for the purpose, is, are we visiting a bucket list destination? And I struggle so hard with bucket list, guys, because mine just grow the second that one thing gets checked off, like 3 more things get added to it. And as I'm getting older, some stuff is coming off. Eric and I were just actually reviewing our bucket list, and one thing that we had on it was trek to Everest Base Camp. Oh, I am very heavily reconsidering that, guys. It was put on the list when I was in like a moment of excitement, and now I'm like, do I really want to do that? I don't know. But I do love bucket lists, and so if is the reason for this trip to just go to a bucket list place? That's fantastic. Have fun. Or is the next location going to be our home, because we are a digital nomad family, and this next location is home. And that is going to kind of be our situation for when we plan our next big trip. Is it will be home, and that has its own type of checklist, if you will, to prepare for. And so those are the 3 big questions. And once you start answering them, you can build the trip up more. So again, the 3 questions are: how long are we able to be gone? When do we want to go? What is the purpose? Or what are we hoping to get out of this experience? And after that, I think you can start thinking about your priorities. And this is the next section of this PDF I have. And I actually sent this to some people to just make sure that it flowed well and everything. And they said, this is fantastic. I wish I would have had this for some of the trips I've planned so far. And I think it's this next part. I think the questions are kind of, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend that I'm this really deep person that just asked you really deep questions. I didn't. I just kind of gave you permission to ask yourself them. But this next part I do think is very critical. And it talks about your priorities. And for each trip, every single trip you take, and if you're a nomadic family, I want you to even do this when you're planning a sub trip or an outing for your location. So again, I am doing this for our trip to the Amazon and our trip to Machu Picchu. I've worked through this same idea for each of those trips. And I want you to prioritize I want you to rank your priorities, okay? And the priorities are this: comfort, convenience, and cost. And I'll say them again: comfort, convenience, and cost. And the reason that I want you to think about your priorities is it's really going to be able to help you figure out what the trip should look like, what things you should do, what you should take. It really helps break down the trip. And I have in the PDF here, think of these like filters, okay? That each of these categories is gonna kind of help you see what is our biggest priority for this trip out of these 3 things. And really quickly, I'm just gonna explain what I mean by comfort, convenience, and cost. So for comfort, this is things like doing stuff that's going to make you feel more comfortable. And because of that, you might have more luggage because you want to bring more comforts from home. You might want to bring more clothes. You might be okay staying at a more expensive place because it's comfortable. You have maybe a higher not higher, but a longer list of our apartment or our hotel must have these things because these are important. It can also look like prioritizing a place that speaks the same language as you, because when we are in a place that speaks a different language, that can be very uncomfortable. And so if comfort is a priority for you, then being in a place that speaks the same language is going to be comforting. Another idea that it could be is going someplace that feels similar to what you're used to in your everyday life. So if you are used to the country, let's say you live in America and you live in a very rural place, well, then planning a trip to another more rural area might be what you want if comfort is your priority. If you are from the city and you are like, hey, I'm very comfortable in this city, then planning a trip with comfort as your priority, maybe you're going to be a little more uncomfortable in a place like a suburb or a more rural area. So that's what I mean by comfort. It's this idea of emotional comfort and physical comfort, not just like, oh, I want to be in first class so I can have a comfortable airplane ride. It's very like an emotional comfort and a physical comfort. And I think something important too as parents is to think comfort for our children. What is going to make them feel comfortable as well? And again, it's more of like an emotional. And then the second one is convenience. And a lot of times for me, this is a very low priority. And I think that when you're thinking of planning a trip, inconveniences are a normal, natural part of traveling. You are going to be inconvenienced. You are going to have to wait in lines. You are going to have to pay for things that you don't want to pay for. You are going to have to carry around things that you don't want to carry around. Like, there is a lot of inconvenience to traveling. But when you prioritize convenience, it can look like finding a place to stay in the city center versus staying in the suburbs. Because if I stay in the center of the city, I do have access to more shops, more restaurants, more stores. There might be more entertainment around versus staying farther out in the suburbs. That's very inconvenient as far as getting groceries, being entertained. Another thing when you prioritize convenience is paying for tickets. If you prioritize convenience, then you might be okay buying tickets online in advance versus waiting in a long line to get some tickets. If you prioritize convenience, then you might eat out at more restaurants because cooking at home can be an inconvenience. You have to make sure you have the groceries. You have to make sure you have all the kitchen equipment. There is a lot that can go into, and it can be very inconvenient to have to cook all your meals at home. I'm actually living that right now because I don't have a baking pan. Oh. I brought measuring cups and measuring spoons, but I don't have a baking pan. And that makes me so sad. And so I am living that side of inconvenient travel right now. And I know it seems silly, but if you are any type of cook or baker, I want you to imagine going into your house and not having a 9x13 or a pie pan or any type of dish that can go in the oven. I have a cookie sheet. That is what I have. And that's very inconvenient. And then the last thing is cost. And this is the one that makes everyone uncomfortable. And it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about money. But we have to talk about money because it's not a weird thing. It's a normal part of thing. When we act like money is any different than any other part of our life, then we're giving it power that it shouldn't have. Money is the same as time. We have a certain amount of it, and we have to decide how we spend it. It's that simple. So if you're comfortable talking about how you spend your time, get comfortable talking about how you spend your money. Not with everyone, and like maybe not on a podcast like this, but there's nothing wrong with talking about money. So if cost is your priority, that seems very simple, right? Like we're going to do everything we can to save money. And a lot of people say that, oh, cost is my number one priority when I'm planning a trip. But that's actually not as true as we think it is because of things like, well, you could have done a budget airline and you could have flown from, so here, let me give this example just from real life. We flew from Norfolk, Virginia to Miami Beach, and then we had to stay in Miami for 2 nights. Now we found an extremely cheap Airbnb. It was very small, it was very uncomfortable, but it worked because I prioritized cost at a very high level. And so it was cheaper for us to fly to Miami, stay there a couple nights, and then there's a budget airline that started flying from Miami to Lima. And we were able to get one-way tickets for the 6 of us for around $110 to $120 per ticket. And so if I could just get us to Miami, then I was able to get us to Lima for less than $1,000. And to go from one continent to another as a family of 6 for less than $1,000, that's amazing. And so that meant, though, that we had to be uncomfortable, like sleeping for a couple days. Like the girls were on pull-out couches. Martin was on a pull-out couch. Ryan was on like this weird chair thing that turned into a bed. Like it's weird, right? But you're like, oh, you go for it because cost is your priority. And so when you just jump online and you are Googling flights from Norfolk to Lima and you're paying around $600 per ticket, you're not prioritizing cost, which is totally fine because you're prioritizing convenience. Because, hey, I can just get on the airplane here and I get off in Lima and it's great. I don't have to worry about anything else. Absolutely nothing wrong with doing that, but that is not making cost your priority. And so you have to ask yourself, am I actually prioritizing cost? Or am I just trying to make sure that we don't go over our budget? And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we're not going to make cost our number one priority, but we are going to make sure we stay on our budget. That's totally fine. And then there's some things where we just go, you know what? I don't care about the cost. The cost is the lowest thing on my radar right now because I really want to have this experience. I really want to go to this place. And so it is. I want to eat at this restaurant. It is the lowest thing on my list of priorities right now. And only you can answer that question. I'm not here to tell you don't do that. I'm here to tell you that we do have to prioritize these things. Now, you might be wondering what all of this has to do with planning a trip. And I'm just going to read this straight from the PDF because I really, really like it. And I say, it's like this. When you know what you want, how you want to get it, and what you're willing to pay for, you can plan a trip that screams custom for your family. And the entire point of this PDF is to encourage you to take a trip with your family and for it to rock so hard that you can't wait to start planning the next one. That is my goal always when I talk to people about planning things. And I get so excited about this idea of planning a trip that just screams me and my family. And so I have here at the bottom of this PDF a kind of a little exercise for you to do. And I'm going to walk through it with for you guys right now, but if you want this PDF, actually do this, okay? And here's what it says. It's a fill in the blank exercise, and it says, my family is going to blank. We want to go here because blank. We are taking this trip, dates, blank. The point or goal of this trip is to blank. Our main priority is blank. And our lowest priority is blank. Because of all this, I know that I'm okay spending more money on blank. And the reason I have that last question in there is because you're going to spend money on a trip. To act like, oh, well, money's my main priority, so I don't have to worry about money. No, even if money is your main priority, you're still going to spend your money on things. And so I've given you 2 examples of one international and one domestic for America. And so even if you haven't started traveling international, I would love for you to grab this PDF because I really think it's going to help. And so again, I'll just read what I have here, and I hope that you guys can see the benefit to it. So I'll do the international one first. My family is going to Peru. We want to go here because we want to visit Machu Picchu, Rainbow Mountain, and the Amazon. We are taking this trip in May because we want to miss the rainy season. The point or goal of this trip is to connect with locals, learn about the Inca culture, and eat good food. Our main priority is cost, and our lowest priority is convenience. Because of all this, I know that I'm okay spending more money on an Airbnb with a kitchen, budget airline tickets, and public transportation. So when I work through this entire PDF and I really think about the trip, I think about what I'm comfortable spending my money on, then I can say, hey, you know what? I want an Airbnb with a kitchen so that I can cook our meals more, because I know that cooking food at the house is going to save me money in the long run. So even if I have to spend a little bit more money on an Airbnb, I know from my past that that will actually save me money in the long run. And so that's prioritizing cost. And with my lowest money being my lowest priority being convenience, I know that I'm okay doing budget airline tickets, like I told you before how we got here. That was not convenient, but since convenience is like a super low priority, and I'm like, you know what, I'm okay being inconvenienced, then I don't care, because cost is my highest priority. And public transportation. I'm okay jumping in a taxi. I'm okay taking an Uber, because I know that we are going to probably be in a place that's not as accessible to things. And so then for the domestic one, I say this. My family is going to New York City. We want to go here because we want to see a Broadway play, ride the subway, and go to the American Museum of Natural History. We are taking this trip beginning of September to celebrate 2 birthdays and hopefully miss the crowds. The point or goal of this trip is to get comfortable with public transportation, see a museum the kids saw in a movie, take the kids to see their first live play. Our main priority is comfort. Our lowest priority is cost. Because of all this, I know that I'm okay spending more money on a nice hotel near what we want to see and the experiences we are going to have. So when I tell you that cost is my lowest priority here, that's not saying that I don't care about the money. Okay, when we say that cost right now is my lowest priority, I think that it would be a disservice to say, oh, you don't care about the money. No, people do care about the money. They just have other things that they're filtering the decisions through before it gets to that final filter. And so with comfort being our main priority, then I'm going to look for maybe a nicer hotel room. I'm going to be okay buying the tickets for the Broadway plays online because I don't want to have to stand in a line. And so I hope that that helps you see how all of this kind of goes together for planning a trip. And I think that when we give ourselves permission to really break down what we're about to do in our life, we handle it better and we can make better choices. And I am really proud of this resource, and I would love to hear what you guys think about it. I would love to send it to you. So like I said, if it sounds like something you would benefit from, find me on Instagram. It's Family of Dashes, and shoot a message and say, hey, I listened to the podcast and I really want that trip planning PDF, and I will make sure that you get it. And that's all, guys. I hope that this has been beneficial, whether you are a nomadic family and you're getting ready to maybe plan a little sub trip within your long-term destination where you are right now. Maybe you're transitioning to a nomadic family. Maybe you are just looking for a way to plan a better family vacation. And I really think that this resource will help you. And I'm really excited to hear what you guys think about it. And with that, I will end this episode on a very high note and let you know me and my family are actually living the nomadic lifestyle. I know that in the previous episodes, I was talking about getting rid of all of our stuff and packing the house. And now we're here. Now we are actually in Lima. We are in our house in Santa Rosa, and we are loving it. And if you want to see just some of the crazy stuff that we have already gotten into, find us on Instagram again and definitely check out the stories. But I want to say thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you continue to travel joyfully.